There are a few things I really like about the Philadelphia Eagles' acquisition of veteran defensive back Michael Carter II. But, and I hate to be the party pooper here, there are a few things that I won't say I dislike. To be fair, I think dislike is entirely too strong of a word for what I'm trying to convey. But I'll say that there's a few things that need to be hashed out about this acquisition for the Philadelphia Eagles. With that said, come on, y'all. Let's take a little walk on the wild side known as film review and talk about the acquisition. To begin, I use the word defensive back intentionally. I did this to remain compliant with Vic Fangio's definition of the alignments within his secondary for the scheme. He's made it very clear that when he looks at nickelbacks, he does not like to use the word cornerback. However, when talking about Michael Carter II, one of the positives about this acquisition is this is a very, very good athlete. We're talking about a 4.3 40 pro day and a sub 7 second. It was in the 6.8 3-cone drill. Very fluid hips, really good mover, good burst. This is an athlete. One of the ways that you could see on film that the New York Jets were using Michael Carter II's athleticism on the season is their use of inverted cover 2. Just a quick refresher, guys, if you don't know what I mean when I say inverted cover 2, it's a cover 2 system that has a wrinkle in it to where you take a separate defensive back who is not a safety, so it could be a corner or a nickel, which makes this one unique is the fact that Michael Carter II, being a nickel, was being inverted post-snap from being down inside the slot to playing up top as a half-field defender, basically. He's playing the role of a safety, giving the quarterback a different look. They were definitely trying to capitalize upon this young man's athleticism. And this is something that when he is brought to Philadelphia, we could definitely take advantage of, right? We have guys like, Quinyon Mitchell. We got Drew Makubo. We got Cooper Dejean. We got these really athletically gifted kind of strange athletes even to where you could see where this would make some sense. Even Jakorian Bennett, when he gets back healthy, he's a really good athlete, right? I mean, you look at Kelee Ringo. He's not the most fluid in the hips, but I mean, this is a 6'2", 210-pound plus defensive back that can run a 4.3 40. I mean, there is an inherent athleticism to him, even though his hips aren't as oily or as smooth in terms of like transitioning and flipping them to run. However, while I may have gotten you excited about all the possibilities and the potential uses for a guy like Cooper Dejean, if you got another athlete like Michael Carter II in your secondary and what you can do there, I will precaution there's another side to this, which is, well, what does that mean for Kelee Ringo? What does that mean for, a guy like Jakorian Bennett who's coming back? What does that mean for a young guy that we're excited about seeing eventually get inserted in McWilliams? Because to me, that's one of the sides where I won't call it like I dislike the move based upon that, because I think that's just too far of a take. But I will say it does leave me concerned about McWilliams and the fact that they are trying to integrate and train him to not just be an outside player, but obviously because of his sub 6 foot stature and the fact that he does have some lateral movement ability, you can see it play out in his testing, that lends you to believe if he can acquire the knowledge, he could play inside and help free up Cooper Dejean. So my point being is if you bring in a Michael Carter II, that probably means that, clearly McWilliams is not ready for the role yet. And you wonder how long it's going to take or, how fast he can develop if those reps are being taken away, if you will. The second aspect about this move that I really, really like is that this young man is a very willing tackler in the run game, and he is a pretty good low defender in terms of what we call the low zone. So just to brush up and what I'm saying when I call something the low zone, guys, the low zone is anything inside of 10 yards, right? It is where you're playing off with, say, a 6-yard cushion or more, and you see something gets checked down like on a bubble screen or a tunnel screen or something like that, and you got to come up and you've got to play violent, you've got to play sudden, and you got to shoot the gap, guys. You got to get through, a block more than likely. I will say that for a guy who is small in stature, he does a pretty good job at playing this. And he's, was very much a big part of the Jets' actual run defense. Even when I saw them get down around the goal line, they were still playing him in run defense. Now, in saying that, some of my concerns here is when I looked at the tape and I was looking over how he was playing, I didn't love the way that, and this isn't just particular to him, and this is what makes it hard to make these judgments. I didn't love the fact the way the Jets were actually playing something as simple as duo. So in the clip I'm about to show you, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are just running a simple duo assignment. To give you some indication, guys, about what the difference is between like a zone run, inside or outside zone versus like duo. Normally when you see a zone, you're going to see a first step left or a first step right. The line kind of blocks in a direction, and then you double two and climb to the second level. While in duo, you're clearing a gap. So your first step is directly into, and then you climb second level and you clear the gap, if you will. Okay. So in this particular situation, we can see that they're running duo. What I don't love here is we have an even front, and this is just, from what I can tell, probably just single gap. I mean, they probably have single gap responsibility. Potentially they're playing gap and a half. I don't know. It's hard to say without knowing the Jets that well, but this looks like just straight up single gap to me, which means you have a gap, you don't get outside the gap. And you could see that the running back is reading the actual play side linebacker, which another really big indicator that what you have here is duo. So he's reading that linebacker. You can see that in return, that means that a guy like Michael Carter II is reading the running back, and his first initial step is to crash inward when he has the outside and containment to the D gap. He gets too far in, other guy gets sealed off, and now we got a nice chunk run here. It gets called back. I think there was something going on here, a hold or something happened, guys, that brought this play back, but the bones of it, the structure of the play, led to me have some concerns about the way that they were playing the run gap here. Now, what I will say is that, for all the concerns you have about physical stature, right, that is a legitimate concern about him being 5'11", 180 some poundish. And I say 5'11" jokingly because everything I've seen said he's like sub 5'10", just short of 5'10", to be quite honest. However, he's athletic as crap, guys, and you can see plays to where he's playing the low zone and a player reverses field, and this man will cross all the way across formation and chase this young man down, and he will make the play. The problem is what happens at the end of the play speaks to one of the concerns with the stature and the size, because he got a little beat up. And that's the other thing is, like, he's a little injury prone, to be quite honest. He's definitely been dealing with some injuries over the past, couple of seasons, shoulders, things like that. And when you're playing in the nickel, it's such a tough assignment, guys. You think of the player who comes to my mind in terms of being a really good athlete and a willing tackler, a guy played the low zone really, really well, but to be quite honest, became injury prone over time. Avonte Maddox. There's a little Avonte Maddox here to the game, right? But I will say one thing I'll give Avonte Maddox over Michael Carter II, which goes into our point 3, is I think Avonte Maddox was better off playing in zone. I think he is a little bit more capable of playing zone concepts. Point number 3 about why I'm excited, the reputation that precedes this young man, that's going to follow him, if you will, is that he's a really good man coverage cornerback. And if you look at the Eagles' kind of totals here, we've been playing a lot more man coverage, and I think a lot of people understand. There's arguments to be made that even in zone systems where you're playing like a zone match and you're carrying a player past a certain yardage, that's basically man coverage just inside of a zone. You got him locked up for a certain, percentage of the field, if you will. But nonetheless, he comes with this reputation of being a very, very good man coverage corner. Although from the 34 snaps, and I'll say 34 snaps is not a huge sample size, guys. I'm not going to read too much into it, but he's got like a 40 overall grading during that period of time. And I want to say he's given up like nearly, I want to say somewhere around half of his completions, 50% completion rate. But he has a sub 100 passer rating allowed, or given up, if you will. So there's something like that to kind of look into. On film, sometimes a guy that's bigger than him is going to beat him. That happens. I'm not worried about that. That's just physics. There's nothing you can do if a guy's got 8 inches of height on you and there's a perfectly placed football from the quarterback. I mean, that's a limitation to anyone who's got that kind of height, variance and cannot have a 8-inch vertical above the other person. That's just going to be a problem everywhere. What does bother me is when I turn on the film and I see some issues in zone breakdown. And it's really tough because what you're going to see here, and I'm going to show you in a minute, is a concept called a drop zone. And this gets played often out of quarters, but it doesn't have to be quarters. It can be in cover 2, as you're going to see here in a second. When you play a drop zone, if you look at your underneath defenders, you're going to have a series of 6 spots that get covered, sometimes by 6 players, sometimes by 5 players, sometimes by 4 players, sometimes by 3 players. It doesn't matter. It's just those 6 spots have got to be covered. The way this works is those 6 zones, you have a flat defender, you have a hook defender, you have a curl defender, you have a curl defender, you have a hook defender, and you have a flat defender. Sometimes when you look over the tape, what you'll see is that one guy may have to cover more than one area. So a guy may have to go simply put like curl to hook or from hook to flat, okay? As a matter of fact, if you look at the opposite side of the field, you can see that one of the players there has multiple assignments because there's only 2 defensive backs over there. Someone covering the flat, but it's absent in terms of the curl and the hook, so that player is curl to hook in terms of what he's covering. But if you go over here to Michael Carter's side, Michael Carter has a curl defender, he's the hook defender, and then their cornerback is the flat defender because it's a cover 2 principle. All right. Cover 2 a lot of times is 5 men underneath, right? Cover 2, 2 above, 5 under, that's cover 2 for the most part. So on this play, what happens? Why is he caught off balance? Why is he caught outside of where he's supposed to be? I also will critique this and say that if you look really closely, I think he did a terrible job of redirecting the receiver. And a lot of times they call this pushing them out of the hashes or, guarding the hashes. This isn't on the hash, but it's the same principle. It's guarding the hashes, guarding the numbers. Basically, you're trying to disrupt or interrupt that actual release from the receiver. With that said, you see that they kind of, Baker starts on one side of the field, sees it's not open, and he comes back to the other side of the field, and immediately Michael Carter, the second, and the defensive back, the cornerback that's on the outside out there, they immediately go to start shooting down low in the low zone to kind of play off like a tunnel screen type action. When they do that, they desert that curl hook area, and now you got a receiver wide open inside the 10-yard line. They're really right around the 5-yard line. So, it's things like that. It's decisions like that where you kind of understand it. You see what tricked them, but nonetheless, you left your area of responsibility. And, you kind of got put in a situation, right? It's similar to a high-low concept, right? If you move down low, then they're going to go right to where the hook in the curl area is. But if you still keep your depth to the hook in the curl, then Baker Mayfield's probably going to dump the ball off, and it's going to be on that corner to try to make a spectacular play and get through the block, and then for you to fill. You become a fill player at that point. I'm not going to sit here and say that, this guy has no idea what he's doing. That's not accurate. It was a tough play. He kind of got caught there. This is a play, though, where I think if you got a guy like Cooper Dejean is just really, really good and instinctful at these things. It's hard to make up for the kind of player that Cooper Dejean will be within a system like this. That's what the tape shows me about this young man. Incredible athlete, a guy that is a willing tackler in the run game and will come down and play the low zone quite effectively. I think there's a little concern about his ability to cover and see things in zone coverage, but tends to have a reputation that says that he's a very good man corner, and we do tend to play more man coverage as the season's gone on, and we've gotten younger in the secondary, to be quite honest. And then you kind of look at the fact that, this is a veteran dude. He's got X amount of snaps in the league. This is somewhat a known commodity, right? The Eagles have made 6 trades for defensive backs or cornerbacks since the 2020 season, right? You go to Darius Slay, to guys like Kerry Vincent and Tay Gowan of the world. You know what I mean? We had a lot of these dudes that we traded and brought in. With that said, I do think this is different from Kerry Vincent and the Tay Gowans, because Kerry Vincent and Tay Gowan, to be fair, those 2 guys were unknown commodities, right? Draftable assets we had high draft grades on, but we didn't know how they would fit our scheme. And we didn't know how they would play in the league, right? We knew they had an opportunity with the current teams that they were with, and it didn't work out for them. And, we were taking a risk. We were taking a flyer on a guy. I don't think that this is that kind of move. This is very obvious, not a Darius Slay type move. It's not a ringer like that. I think this is more kind of towards just slightly above the Jakorian Bennett level move, right? When we traded for Jakorian Bennett is a guy who has actual snaps in the league. He's a guy who has started games. He is younger. He has not played as much, though, as Michael Carter II. That has to be factored in, guys. So it's somewhere between Darius Slay. It's not that level of move quite clearly, but it's also not quite to the level of uncertainty of Jakorian Bennett, even though we know there was a lot of promise and there was some tape to go off of with Jakorian Bennett. He's somewhere in that happy medium area, that middle. We'll see, guys. One thing I love about this is that this decision is coming from Vic Fangio. This decision is coming from, Parker, our defensive back coach. I gotta like it. You know, Christian Parker signing off on this. If Vic Fangio's identifying this guy, those dudes have a tremendous success rate with these defenders. To be quite honest, they're really good at making players who are just bodies become somebody, if you will. All right, y'all. I appreciate y'all's time and attention. Listen, if you like this type of content, go ahead and check this video out here. I think you're gonna like this a lot. All right, y'all. Peace. I'm out of here.